Hi, everyone. We're going to talk today about the changes to the Scrum Guide. First question is, why does the Scrum Guide change? Angela.
Continuous improvement. It would be extremely hypocritical to talk about being open to receiving feedback if there was no openness to receive feedback about the framework. And it's been around 30 years. So do we think some things needed to improve? Yeah. So continuous improvement.
It's that old intellectual humility. What we knew back then might have changed since now. So, changes.
Drink our own champagne.
Yeah. Changes to the 2020 Scrum Guide. What's one of them?
Well, before we go there, let's talk about why the Agile Manifesto doesn't change.
Okay.
Because I get these graduates who are like, well, how come the Scrum Guide gets updated, but the Agile Manifesto doesn't? And it's worth noting that Scrum is Agile, but Agile doesn't necessarily mean Scrum. And the Agile Manifesto was a roll-up of 7 different frameworks originally. And for you grammar nerds out there, and you know who you are, the Agile Manifesto is written in present tense. So if you're reading it in the year 2001, it's the same as if you're reading it in the year 2023. It's intended to be evergreen because it's a set of values and principles that are pretty universal. And then how you accomplish those values and principles, maybe look at Scrum, maybe look at XP, maybe look at DSDM, all those different frameworks.
So all Scrum is Agile, but not all Agile is Scrum.
Sure.
So the changes that happened in 2020, what's one that pops to your mind?
Product goal. All the time I hear product vision, product vision, product vision. And I'll just, pick on you and me for a moment because we're easy targets.
Used to. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So when we used to use John F. Kennedy's Man on the Moon speech to talk about a product vision, we were wrong.
No, yeah.
If you listen to Kennedy's famous speech, he says, we choose to go to the moon by the end of the decade. We choose to go to the moon by the end of the decade. That's a goal. Had he said, someday we'll go to the moon, that would have been a vision, because visions are audacious. They may never be realized. But when you pull a Scrum team together, chances are there's some idea of the product or service or deliverable, if we like that word, that they need to focus on. So product goal. I like it. I think it's simpler.
Another one has the word goal in it too. It's sprint goal.
But that didn't get added. It's always been there. So it's always been there, but it seems that people have been leaving sprint planning for the last 28 years without identifying a goal. I know none of our listeners would do such a thing. But to force us to have that goal, to give that focus, that clarity, sprint planning changed from 2 topics to 3 topics. So now topic 1 is, why this sprint? Why do our stakeholders care about this sprint? Why do our customers care about this sprint? Topic 2 is pulling those items off the product backlog onto the sprint backlog. And then topic 3 is how, breaking it down into the how are we going to do it, so to speak. So sprint goal's always been there, but what's new is actually talking about it at the beginning of sprint planning, which is now topic 1.
And in topic 3 of sprint planning, they used to use a certain word to how they would break something from the product backlog into something smaller. But because the predominance of a particular tool out there using the same word, they changed it to unit of work.
Units, which is so weird for me. So it used to be tasks, but you're right. The tools companies have subverted what task means, and they're also creating that hierarchy because they're built on relational databases.
Task, subtask.
Subtask,
so you'd see people get confused when we would train and use the word task, and they're like, what is it?
Stop the madness.
So now they're talking units.
Units. Breaking the items down into units of 1 day or less so that we can show that continuous progress towards our overall goal.
And then when it comes to the actual people involved, they use the word accountabilities now. And it's not roles anymore, it's accountabilities. I did a word search on roles, and it's been a while since that was in there, but they're predominantly focusing on the word accountability. Why do you suppose that is?
I think it's a subtle change, and I think a lot of people miss it. For me, it's always been, we really don't care what you call these people. You might say, well, we have a product manager and we're going to ask them to be our product owner, you can still call them product manager. We're not going to micromanage how you run your company, because people will get into well, where in the Scrum Guide does it talk about having managers and how many managers and hiring and firing? Project management doesn't talk about that stuff either. This is a framework. This is a set of guidelines. So as long as you have someone that's executing this list of accountabilities, they're responsible for that list, don't really care what you call them. So role is kind of that waterfall hangover where your title goes with one singular activity, and that's never been the case in Scrum. So I actually like that they're now saying, here's some accountabilities. We call that set of accountabilities product owner. We call this set of accountabilities Scrum Master. We call the people doing the work developers. Don't really care what you call them. And in this day and age of diversity, equity, inclusion, it also gets out of all that nonsense. Because how many times have you had people either in your classes or in a coaching conversation say, I take issue with the phrase Scrum Master. Well, it has nothing to do with the slave trade. So it's like, call it whatever the heck you want. It's an accountability. Yeah. Really? We can call it something else? Yeah. So I think that it's a subtle change, but I think it gets missed. I think it's missed, and it could do a whole lot of good in some of these organizations if people took note of that.
It frees people to come from anywhere to fill these accountabilities.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you've been there for a year or 20 years.
Well, I always say Scrum isn't something you do in addition to work, because how many times do you hear that? I have to go do my job, and I have to go be the Scrum Master for this Scrum thing. Whoa, 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 whoa. You have talented, amazing people. Who are they? Who naturally is your facilitator coach?
Right.
Who naturally owns the scope schedule? Right. So you already have these people. You just call them something else. So I think that mindset gets missed when we don't understand that they're accountabilities, not roles.
Absolutely. If you're enjoying some of what we're talking about or what we've talked about in the past, please consider liking and subscribing on our channel. We have also put in a short survey, extremely short, to try and see what else you would like us to talk about. And I think there's even a joke in the survey, so we'll have a link in our description. Are there any other changes, Angela, that come to mind when it comes to the 2020 Scrum Guide?
One team, one dream. So people used to get hung up on the fact that there was development team, and then we had Scrum team. And Scrum team was product owner, Scrum master, development team. Well, why is the word team there twice? That's redundant. And so they shortened it to developers. Much debate about the fact that developer doesn't mean software developer. Even when it was development team, it didn't mean that, because Scrum is based on a metaphor from the new product development game article, Harvard Business Review, 1986. And so it's about product developers. So it's just an agnostic term for the doers, the people doing the work. So we've got product owners, Scrum master, developers as the accountabilities that make up the Scrum team. So no more redundancy in the word team. One team, one dream.
What else comes to mind for the changes in the 2020 Scrum Guide?
The daily Scrum. Since everybody's been ignoring what was in the Scrum Guide anyway, they removed the 3 suggested questions.
Why did they do that?
People ignored them. It never said, here's what I did yesterday. Here's what I'm going to do today. No blockers. Yeah. That's not what the question said.
Yeah.
They said, what did I do since we last met towards achieving the sprint goal? What am I going to focus on today towards achieving the sprint goal? And do I see any impediments towards meeting the sprint goal? I kind of picture Ken going, by God, they're going to talk about the sprint goal if it kills me, and it just might. So now the current Scrum Guide says the developers can conduct the daily Scrum any way they want to, as long as they're talking about the sprint goal. I get these Scrum Masters who are like, I run the daily Scrum. It's like, oh, do you now? Command and control, adult daycare provider. That is not what it says. They're supposed to have a daily planning conversation talking to each other. If you're not there, it still goes on. because the Scrum Master might be on vacation. Okay. They might be talking to the Senior Vice President about an impediment that they needed busted for the team. We trust the team, and they're perfectly capable of conducting their own daily Scrum.
Absolutely.
So I think, it's a necessary change, but again, it's one I think that's totally overlooked.
Absolutely. Are we to the point where we can summarize everything that we've had?
I think so.
right,
Those
well-
are the big ones. There's some other subtle ones, but those are the ones that I think
So
would make
in-
people go, oh, I
In
missed
reverse
that.
order, we would say we took the 3 questions out of the daily Scrum.
The daily Scrum,
We started talking about developers, not dev team.
one team, one dream,
We talked about units when
No
it
more
comes to
task.
tasks.
units,
We talked about sprint goal. It
because
was
it's always
there,
been there.
but they've now got it as topic 1 and product goal.
Correct.
Well, there you go, folks. Thanks so much.